the official launch of halftheskyAsia.com by Sabrina and her team. Now, we've got a very exciting panel discussion. I can't wait to hear from each and every one of you. So please join me in welcoming Alexandra Mackenzie, Deputy High Commissioner, the British High Commission, with a warm round of applause. We also have, as we do, ladies first, Sarah Cheng, Chief Executive Officer, Fuji Xerox Singapore. On to the gentlemen, we've got Chris Mead, Head of APEC Talent Acquisition, DuPont. Chris. Duncan Hewitt, Senior Vice President and General Manager, Asia, Pacific, and Japan, VMware. And Sabrina will be moderating this panel. Over to you.
Thank you so much for all the panelists, and you guys have been so amazing to myself and very supportive to Half the Sky. So let's go right into it. You guys ready? Yeah. So changing demographics, growing emerging markets, and new buying trends all point to the needs for a more diverse and inclusive workforce. So why are there so few companies willing to invest in such a business imperative?
Good for you. Well, I'm holding the microphone. I'm not sure if that means I have to start. Do I use this? Yeah? Okay. It's a really great question, and I'm not sure if I'm the right person to start because I don't come from a business background, but I've got sort of three things to say on that. And one is that, again, from a government perspective, it's not just about the business imperative, right? It's about a moral imperative. It's about what the right thing to do is. So, no country can flourish if you leave behind 50% of its people, right? So we have to make sure 50% of the population, people holding up half the sky, are part of what you're doing. And as you said in your introductory remarks, there is an economic imperative there as well, because if women were playing the same role in the workforce as men, we'd add 26% to global GDP by 2025. So there's a reason to be doing that. And that's why from a British government perspective, and probably from the perspective of other governments represented here, gender equality is an absolutely fundamental part of our foreign policy as well. We want to make sure that diversity and inclusion that you're talking about is something that we're doing as part of our government outreach and our collaboration with other governments to make sure that women are holding up half the sky all over the world. The second thing is in the way that my employer, the Foreign and Commonwealth Office, our foreign ministry, then kind of enacts that, right? So there's a business imperative to make sure that we have women in our workforce. And we're getting better. We think we have 60% of our new fast streamers are now women. 30% of our senior management and ambassadors around the world are women, including in really key places like China and the United Nations. So we're doing better on that. We're doing it through a number of ways that maybe we can talk about a bit later on, but everything from recruitment to managing the talent pipeline to targeted interventions to looking at how you retain your talent. And then in the British High Commission, where I work, we have about a third of people who are diplomats, but the rest are staff who are on local contracts. So I'm responsible for what brings them in and what keeps them working for us. And I'm absolutely committed to making sure that part of what we stand for is diversity and inclusion. So in every advert that we send out for a job, it's got our offer in there. And people come and work for us and they say they want to work for us because we're an inclusive employer. We say it's important that we bring women in and we make sure that we keep them in. And again, maybe we can talk a bit more about how we all do that a bit later on.
And in fact, British High Commission is going to be on our platform soon. Yes, thank you.
We're very excited about that.
Yeah.
Good evening. Congratulations, Sabrina. It's a fantastic launch, and we're very flattered to be here. I actually do not see the so-called reluctance in hiring female from my experience. I think Singapore actually, compared to many, many other countries, are very advanced. Now, we do see different participation between male and female based upon, I think, different categories. So for example, we all talk about STEM, right? We talk about science, technology. These are the areas that the female percentage are much lower. But if you look at marketing, finance, PR, there are fields that the number of women far outnumber men. So for me, I think as an employer, as you said, half of the consumers, the audiences, or our corporate clients, half of them are female. So there's no reason for us not want to hire, equal the talent. Second thing is, as we go more and more advanced in the social, in the human, how do you say this, civilization, before we had more products, but now you see that what we enjoy, what we consume, more and more services. More and more we talk about how you feel, not just what you use, right? So think about this, right? Women are much more a decision maker and much more a sensor, much more a feeler. Then in this situation, in a consumer environment, we also see the shifting of decision power that many of the items that we consume or services is actually decisions are made by women. So as a corporation, we need to understand that mindset and psyche. There's no reason why we do not embrace women employees. Right? So I think that the question really is about different categories. We need to condition little girls, young professionals to say there's certain category we can be anywhere we want to be. STEM, we need more. I think one of the toy company, Mattel or someone, they produce the Barbie dolls, right? Last month, I read there are 3 kinds of new Barbie dolls are designed. One is an engineer. One is a airplane pilot. And the third one is a stewardess, right? And these are fantastic. Speaking of conditioning, we need to think about this. Starting from young generation, starting from the family, from what they play with. That's what we talk about conditioning, that we need to tell little girls, you can pursue anything you want to. Mathematics, science, astrology, it doesn't matter, right? We can do that. I think that's really much more a focus about how we promote the pipeline of STEMs and some of the more typically at this moment more male-dominated fields.
Chris?
Thank you. First of all, congratulations on Half the Sky. You are remarkable, so well done. So I have a slightly different perspective, and I agree with about 85.5% of what you said then. But there's one big one that I'm going to slightly take a different take on. So my background, I spent 10 years as an army officer in Australia and around the world, particularly around Asia Pacific, and then I've been in Singapore for the last 13 years, and other countries, like Hong Kong for 4 years, and so on and so forth. Coming from the military to the corporate world, so the military is like, if there's ever a ground to try and break, that nexus, it's in the military. And in fact, Singapore, I saw just yesterday, we're taking some women through what it means to do national service. I'm not sure what the implications of that are, but at least they're starting. My first 8-9 years or so in Singapore was running a global recruitment agency for Southeast Asia, and so it's only relatively recently. And I saw some shocking behaviour amongst multinational companies, local companies, regardless, really, to your point before, Sabrina. So I actually think there are challenges facing young ladies in the workforce coming in and breaking those stereotypes. And over that time, I would go and see 5, 8, 10 clients every single week. So if you add that up over 8 years, it's a lot of people I saw. And I've got to say, there was a huge amount of bias. Some of it was unconscious and just like, hey, Chris, maybe we don't want a, female for this job. And some of it was like, I want a male between 35 and 40, right? And that's as little as 5 years ago. So I do think there is a real problem out there in Singapore. It is there. And education, or there's 2 things to my mind. Education, which starts, again, to my mind, at home, right? But then in the workplace will help start to break that stereotype. And then the second thing is taking the responsibility to call it out. I remember walking out of I won't obviously mention the name, but I remember walked out of a client brief with an American company about 6 years ago, big multinational, and they wanted us to recruit this sales director. Would have been a fee of around about $80,000. That's a chunk of cash, right? And the hiring manager, who was a male from America, gave us probably the most biased brief I've ever had. And to my consultants, DeMay, who would have got the $80,000 fee, we walked out. So you got to call it out. Now that I'm internal in talent acquisition, it's again holding your key stakeholders to account. So if you see a 1%er that's bad behaviour, you call it out. You call it out. And I don't think that happens enough in organisations today. That's something that I'm quite passionate about as well.
Gets harder as you go along the edge. So congratulations, Sabrina. Since we met last year, it's great to see the progress and launching it. A couple of things. One is at a senior level, the nature of work has actually changed. If you look at what's happening, and I guess to Sarah's point around people buying services or buying solutions, it takes collaboration. So what I'm seeing is actually starting to see an understanding at the senior part of organisations that if the nature of work's change and it takes a much higher collaboration, you need a different team. And in a different team, you need people who can collaborate, who can work together without ego. And that also drives a completely different mix change in your organisation. Now, I'm sitting here as the first day I joined my company. I walked out of my office into my marketing VP's office and said, have you got an organisation chart? And she gave me the organisation chart, and she was the only woman on a leadership team of 22 people. So I said, Pam, where are the other women? And she said, there aren't any. And I'm happy to say Uma, who's here, is my 8th hire out of 22. And it's a 3-year journey. But I guess part of the nature of that is understanding that we need to engage differently. 50% of the population is women. And so therefore I should reflect society. And I need a team that work together. Now, one other funny story for you. I've landed in a position that all the money in my organisation is controlled by 4 women. My marketing, my finance, my HR, and my operations. And they have an amazing collaborative relationship. We actually move at light speed compared to where we were, with a lot less tension and a lot better engagement across the team. So as a leader running a leadership team with 2,500 people, it's changed, and we've consciously changed who we are, how we're structured, but it takes work and it takes time and it takes commitment to understand you've got to change your business to match where the market's going.
Can I just add one thing? Because I agree with you. I think there are different levels too, right? At the senior level, there's absolutely a glass ceiling, and I see it in terms of the number of senior level and also the board level, right? Now, for these, I believe if we want to swing something, I am totally for certain, unless we have a very, very strong champion, we need some intervention. So for example, certain target setting, certain objective setting at a level that we had a heated debate last month within Women's Forum about setting target and all that. But I believe intervention is needed because human beings we have all this unbiased unconscious bias. If we don't have intervention, it will not change. So that's I'd like to add to it. Good for you.
I'll add one other thing. There's a piece of research that came out earlier this year that talks about the tipping point. And the tipping point's 25%. And the tipping point's about where do you go from being a minority to actually being a community. And that tipping point, I can tell you from personal experience, is real. Because when we went past that tipping point, the behaviour in my leadership team changed. And we became more attractive for others to join. So it's something to be conscious of. And if you're in an organisation that doesn't value it, find one that does.
So we're only at our question 1. We already have quite a debate already.
Alex did a great answer up front, so she set pressure.
I know.
I'm going to come back to what you were actually saying, there's Duncan, because I think we can kind of flip it around a little bit, and it's not sure what women need to do, but it's what employers need to do. And I think, it's not even just about women. What do we need to do as employers to be attractive employers to younger generations in particular, who rightly have different and higher expectations of their employer, which will be around things like flexibility and very much about values. I completely am with you on values. People are looking for what organisation do I work for that really chimes with who I am and what I believe in. So as employers, we have to respond to that. So for example, in our High Commission, I feel really passionately about making sure that it's an inclusive place. I've moved, when I first got here, I think we had one person doing flexible working. We're now up to 40% because I've absolutely driven it as something that is responsive to people's needs, not just caregivers necessarily, but to everyone who's got a life, right? And everyone's got a life. Everyone should be free to pursue what that means. I've been really pleased to work with a company on bringing in returnships, for example, which is something I'd never heard of before. And I think it's such a fabulous idea, sort of giving an opportunity to someone who's been out of the workforce for a while to come in. So one really great example, we had a lady who came in to cover a job for 2 months. There was no one there. She came in to do a 2-month kind of placement. Within 6 months, she'd gone from doing that 2-month placement to covering a maternity cover at a more senior level, sort of middle management level. By the end of that 6 months, she had then found and got another job, which was a regional manager for the whole of Scottish Development International and Asia Pacific. So from month 1 to month 6, she'd moved up 3 levels because she had all those skills. She just spent a few years out, raising her kids. But that opportunity to come in, to prove herself, and to be able to identify and pursue opportunities it was wonderful. So doing things like that, which kind of interventions in a way, is really, really helpful, and demonstrating that that's it. And we hear that back. So I'm willing to go out there and say, in government we don't pay a lot of money. So that's not what brings people to us. But what brings people to us is a really great and inclusive offer. And a statement up front in recruitment. This is what we stand for. This is what we value. This is who we are. And when you're with us, this is what's important to us. This is how we support you, your career, your lifestyle, your ambitions. And I think that's what's going to keep people at all levels. And I don't think that's just in government, right? I think that even applies in the corporate sector.
So with rapid economic and technological changes taking place around the world, all workers, but especially women, we need to be skilled, mobile, and tech savvy to adapt to the new world of work. So what steps can be taken to ensure women are prepared for the future of work?
Okay, this is me trying to be brief. Future-ready skills is in everyone's mind. It's top of mind for all of us, right? And it's not just women. We all have that challenge. And I would say that, in general, keep your curiosity open, keep learning. Secondly, continue to develop our problem-solving skills, continue to develop our lateral thinking skills, because these are the skills that cannot be replaced. And as human beings, AI technology will not be able to replace that. But in the meantime, we must develop our own. There must be a core skills, whatever that is. Remember, curiosity, problem-solving skills, lateral thinking skills, and that's how we equip ourselves for the future.
So I'm going to agree with Alexandra there. It's actually up.
Disagree with me.
No,
85.6%.
100% this time. So I agree. It's actually, to flip the question, it's actually about the employer. The workforce these days will choose the employer, not the employer choosing the workforce, particularly if we're all after the same top talent, right? DuPont is just going through an exercise at the moment to hire MBA graduates who've got maybe 4, 5, 6, 7 years experience prior to MBA. We put through a first stream of about 50 of first interviews, and we asked them, first of all, what was important to them in choosing their organization, right? And we use those words exactly. And each one got an individual survey, right? They went together, it was online, then the results came back. Number one was not money. Number two was not the manager, although that was in the top 3. Number one was culture and values. Like 98% of them came back saying, that's what I'm choosing my company on. And we were quite happy with that, because I personally think we've got a fantastic inclusive culture, and our core values are 217 years old. And we actually select on culture and values. So this week and last week, which is why I look a bit tired, we've been through the top 20 exhaustive assessment centres and one-on-one interviews and panel interviews and all the rest of that good stuff. And it's boiled down to us selecting on culture and values, but them selecting us on culture and values as well. And my advice would be follow the culture and values every time, because everything else can be great. You can be paid $1 million, you can have the best boss in the world, the flexible hours, and all that stuff is great. But if you're not aligned with the culture and values, then it's never going to work.
So I think one of the things I've found, I guess, trying to understand is actually listening skills has changed. And to Alex's point, sort of understanding what are the limitations, particularly for women coming back into the workforce, whether it's parents or children or other commitments, but trying to set up something that enables them to articulate it and not be scared. Because the really bad bit is when they're scared, so they don't tell you. and you end up in situations where they can't cope. When if you'd listened early enough and understood, actually there's usually a solution. Now, we're only a 21-year-old startup, so we don't have 200 years of history. But what we do have is an ability to actually listen and pivot very quickly, because we're an innovative company that's grown from nothing to $10 billion. And I guess creating an environment that allows people to feel comfortable that they can actually talk. And I ended up actually shutting down the 31st floor. I got rid of my 60 square metre office and moved to open plan for the whole leadership team. And so people talk. And it's amazing then once you get down to, I've actually got this problem, actually what you can do with technology can make a huge difference in terms of flexibility. You can work anywhere, in any country, doing just about anything. It's just listening hard enough and create the right environment. And hats off to you around being able to bring people in part-time. I haven't solved that one yet.
Build your own brand. Do not think that nobody noticed you. You're only an analyst or you're a account manager. Everything you say, everything you do, every project, every presentation, your personal brand is there. Be very mindful of what does your name mean to others, because it's performance reputation and your point of views goes a very long way. And those are the ones, once you leave an impression in others' mind, and that's actually those kind of breakthrough your career opportunities. Plus using those opportunities to make a statement about diversity. Thank you.
Thank you. I have two. I'm sure they're not. One is a little bit trite, I suppose, but it's knowing who you are and being true to it. And I mean, for me, for example, I'm glad my boss isn't in the room, but she would know it. My family is more important than my job. For example, I'm happy to say that. I'm not going to work 10-hour days regularly because I want to go and see my children. But I think that knowing what's important to me makes me better at my job. So having a family, for example, for me has made me better at prioritizing, better at managing, better at empathy, better at judgment, better at making decisions under pressure, all those different things. And I'm quite happy and confident to go, that's where I'm coming from. So I would say that. And sometimes it takes a bit of time to get there, but I think knowing what's important to you and then sticking with that is good. The second thing kind of goes back to a bit of what you were saying, Duncan, about kind of collaboration. I would say build alliances, find your allies and build a collaborative sort of network, either in your organization to help push for the kind of culture and values that you want, or across everywhere so you get the kind of roles that you want. But doing things in a collaborative rather than a competitive way, I think is a great way for everyone to move forward.
110%. So I actually struggle with this question a little bit. I thought about it since we first met on this topic maybe a few weeks ago, because I think it's really important, the stance or the advice. So I wrote down a lot of things and I changed it and scrubbed it out and wrote it down again. And I thought, I haven't got the answer. So I went and found what I thought would be good answers. And I asked some people who I really admire and respect. So the first person was my daughter. So Chloe is 20 on Saturday. I can't believe it. And she's just about to finish her first year of university studying psychology. And so I read the question out and I said, exactly. So what would your advice be to anyone? And she said, Dad, I'm busy. I said, no. This is really important. And I sat her down and I explained who you were. Sabrina also knows my wife, actually. We just worked that out last week. And she looked at me in those steely green eyes of hers and said, just do it. And I looked at her and she walked away. Oh, sorry if I get a bit emotional, but she walked away and I was so proud of her because she's done the whole thing herself. But, sorry. And she's putting herself through university. We've been in Singapore for 13 years. She's had a part-time job for like 6 years and she's saved it all up and she's doing it herself because she wanted to do it herself. We contribute bits and pieces, but she wanted to do the whole thing. So I thought that was really good advice. So she looked at me and said, just do it. Then the second one was, I have a millennial in my team in Singapore, a fresh graduate from NUS. and I asked her the same question this morning. And it was along the same, her response was along the same lines, but I thought even more insightful. She's a bit further on into her life, and she's graduated from NUS with honours and very, very sharp person. And she said, I expected her to say, study hard, work hard, do all that sort of stuff. And she said, no. She said, put yourself out there and don't be afraid to fail. And I thought that was really cool as well. And then the last one was someone, sorry if I'm taking up some time, but the last one was someone I really admire and respect. I brought her out from England. She applied to a job and I interviewed, brought her out from England about 10 years ago now as a 21-year-old, very junior recruitment consultant. And she now holds a whole of Asia Pacific talent management role for a life sciences company, and a lot of power in her hands. A really remarkable lady. I should introduce you to her. And I asked her what was her advice, and she said, be your own career manager.
Tough one to follow. So I guess a couple of things. The first is the concept of mentoring, really, really important. Look for people who can give you advice, who are willing to spend time with you and engage, because that's partly how you learn. I'm fortunate. I've now been mentoring a number of women, and some of them now for 10 years. And I still get phone calls that says, I'm looking to change jobs. I just need someone to bounce off you. And a mentor is actually quite a gratifying role because you don't actually do anything. You just have to listen and then provide some advice, and they'll do whatever they do. But I think the first thing is there's no better time than today in the last, in millennials for a woman. No better time. And that's what I tell my daughter. At 22, this is the best it's ever been. And if you're willing to find mentors and you're willing to engage and ask and be true to yourself, the world is your oyster. It really is. There is just amazing opportunities for a millennial coming through. And they're smart, they work hard, they're more confident, and the environment's just getting better and better every day. And that's, my goal is to make that environment to allow them to succeed.
Thank you so much for a lot of insightful, inspiring comments and a little bit emotional as well. But I love that. So do we have time for Q&A? Okay, maybe we can take some questions, 2 questions. Any questions?
While you're thinking, I just have sorry. I was just going to give a quick advertisement. So Sabrina runs basically a job board. So I just swallowed a fisherman's friend. It's not good advice. Don't do that. Probably need a glass of wine. So Sabrina runs, as part of her Half the Sky initiative, runs basically a job board for women. So companies advertise jobs up there, and basically women apply and part of the database as well. We've had some of our jobs up on Half the Sky, and we've found a fantastic lady who applied and has joined the organisation. So for all you employers out there, get your jobs on Half the Sky.
Thank you so much. A few more wines for you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Sabrina, and thank you to all the panelists for your comments. I'd like to come back to the topic of meritocracy. I think that's one of the biggest obstacles to gender diversity at the top. We have quite a large contingent, and I would argue the majority of senior management, possibly globally, are meritocracy obsessed. They think if women were good enough, they would get here by themselves. But the reality is that the playing field is not level, not by a large margin. So my question is, what would you do to change that? If you could only implement one change within an organization, or does it take one whole professional generation for that to change?
So a quick introduction. Shin is actually a CEO of Pictet Asset Management.
So I think good getting the water to wash down the fisherman's friend. The first part, and I guess I make it personal. So I have a leadership team of 22 people. My job is to actually start and be a role model for my organisation and bringing women through. And some of it is actually providing opportunities, knowing that they may not have all the skills, but they're on the right path, and coaching and mentoring them and accelerate them up through the organisation to create a bigger talent pool. That's part of my job. And that's something I can make a difference on. I can actually make a difference on. The same needs to happen, I guess, at every level of the organisation. But I think the easiest thing is it starts from home first, in terms of you can make a difference, you can find opportunities suited to women to allow them to accelerate, and you can listen to create roles that they can succeed in. And the more people that do that, it will actually change the nature of work. I didn't plan on being 8 out of 22 after 3 years. This just happened to be where we've landed. Personally, I would rather have been at 11 and said, like the panel, there's, it's balanced. But if we don't start there in organisations and actually drive that change, then it's going to stay there. And it's going to stay there at the very senior levels. So we've got to build the talent pool and provide opportunities. And as leaders, we have that opportunity.
So sounds like your entire boss level are in one position, right? 90. Okay. It is their position are consistent, right? So if I were you, I think there are a couple of things. One is, what can you do at your brim of authority? Do that. And of the group of people, I think it would be important to find, don't talk to them as a group. You find a sponsor. You find one of the most likely, like a small, like a Duncan inclination, kind of strong tendency to have the aptitude. You find one sponsor, and you figure out how to get a message through the sponsor. Maybe some statistics, right? To say that, hey, you guys say we're level playing field, but it's not, because we only have this many pipelines. And if we continue this way, 200 years later, right? So I think have some numbers and logic and use that to convince. But I think one of the emotional sponsorship is very, very important. I don't know if you can find one or not. And the third one is that and this come back to the value, the value of the organization. Is that aligned with yours? And I don't know, you say, I'm sorry, what I'm asking is really not unreasonable, and I don't find the alignment, and I got better place to be. I don't know, but sometimes it can be this personal. Sometimes it can be, but I think there must be a sponsor. You can find one.
Those were great answers.
Any more questions?
Hopefully I can just talk. I think it's an interesting scenario, and it goes back to Duncan's point about where the organisation is at that 25-30% tipping point. If you're over that, then you've got something to work with, right? As Farah was saying. The real challenge is if you're starting from ground zero, then do you want to fight the fight? Are there people around you in the organisation who can help you fight the fight? And if so, fantastic. If not, then is that your happy place? And if it ain't your happy place, go and find your happy place.
I have one more idea. Invite one of them, the one you think, couple of them you think they have a higher aptitude, invite them to one of the event, make them a speaker, make them engage, make them involved, so expose them into the women agenda. And that can be a subtle influencing approach. Any other question?
I think that's it. That's it for the evening. Yes.
Ladies and gentlemen, can we give the entire panel a warm round of applause, and Sabrina as well? We've got a token of appreciation Sabrina would like to present to all our panelists. Something she's specially prepared. I think this calls for a photo opportunity. A big thank you to each and every one of you for taking the time out and being with us here today. Some really valuable insight as well. Yeah. Could I invite you for a group photo, please? Yes. Now would be the time. We can grab this situation. And for those of us who aren't taking pictures, a warm round of applause one more time, if you might, for our esteemed panel as well. Thank you very much. What a wonderful group of people to be with here tonight. Now, we've got finger food. We also have drinks, canapes. We want you to network. We want you to make friends. So stay for the night. I think there's more wine at the back. It's delicious. I might have had a glass or two. So I'll let you enjoy the rest of the evening. And should you be taking pictures, I'm sure some of you already have, Half the Sky Asia, tag them. And the hashtag again is Half the Sky Asia. One more time for Sabrina, ladies and gentlemen.